Hello again. Great to see everyone. I guess I actually can't see everybody, but I hear the feedback, so I know people are present on the other side. Bill will hopefully be here shortly as well. What I did this week for everybody was kind of set up that Instagram slideshow again for you to kind of have feedback there directly if you go onto my Instagram page. And then you'll be able to see me and Bill kind of have some exercises that we do in the gym. We picked a couple this week that we think will be relatively easy to find some, apparatuses at home and try to replicate this. I'm going to go over a couple of exercises right away that actually don't have to do with anything at all. It does possibly, actually, I'm sorry. You need somebody else. You need somebody else to help you, but you don't need any machines or equipment or anything like that. We can also be sitting and standing. So we got a lot of requests about that, in the sense of if I'm in a wheelchair, what exercises can I start there? Or where's the beginning for me to go? So Bill and I kind of put our heads together and came up with a couple simple ones. I wanted to refresh on week one, just in case people were missing, the push and the pull. So the push and the pull with the upper body, if someone is kind of, almost doing like a handshake or a, like an arm wrestle position, that's how we can find the push and the pull in the upper body. So we went over that a little bit in the first week. You can also do that on a table if you don't have anybody else sitting at a dinner table or maybe a kitchen counter, sliding your arm forward and backwards. The important part is knowing the muscles that we're trying to use. When we're doing a press, it is the front side of the chest. And when we're doing a pull, it's more of the back side of the shoulder. So what I wanted to go over today was similar aspects, but this is kind of loading our glutes, loading our hips, a very strong muscle that is going to kind of keep our stabilizers for standing, whether we're trying to walk or, do some kind of a squat, we're trying to work kind of the legs and hip muscles. So if we are sitting, to kind of start there, someone or a band, you can get a band or, even a belt and just put pressure out. And so what I like to do with Bill, and this was really towards our very, very beginning, so that's what we were kind of putting our heads together of, what did we do towards the very beginning? And so he would sit down on a box. I would make sure his feet tried to stay as flat as they could. And I would just put my hands on the outside of his knees. He would then drive his knees outwards. Okay, when we drive our knees outwards like that, we don't want to lose our feet, kind of the foot onto the ground. And we're activating kind of some backside hip glute muscles. So when we're doing that, it's called an isometric contraction, meaning you're pushing into a force or you're making contraction of the muscle, but you're not really moving. Or you're not moving. So that'll activate the hips. We can flip the hands to the inside and have them pull in. There are times where I would make him pull in and bring my hands to the center, then release it, make him pull in, bring my hands to the center and release it. But half of it is also telling Bill what he's trying to use. When we're pushing outwards on my hands here, we're working the backside hips. When we're pulling inwards, it's more of the inside thigh. But great muscles to start for that stabilizing or to try to activate, to maybe feel a little more confident making the stand or standing for longer, or not, a big thing with Bill and I is he always told me, he said, I always look for a handrail or look for something that I can hold on to. And absolutely, I love it's good to have that backside confident, knowing you have something, but I also want him to feel confident standing, feeling strong there, being able to use his muscles to keep the posture upright. So, those are some really, really simple ones right there, where it doesn't take necessarily too much. Like I said, you can use a belt, you can put it around your legs, push outwards. You can use your own hands if you have the power to pull inwards. And then obviously somebody else would be great with assistance there. So that's a really easy start. If we are kind of, pushed to just more so at a sitting position right now, we feel more comfortable there. That's a great spot to start for the inner and outer thighs and hips. I wanted to progress now into getting into that Instagram, because this was a great one. It took us a long time and through. So what I'm going to do is, June, can I share the content now? Because it wasn't allowing me to do it beforehand.
Yes, you should be able to share it.
Okay, let's see. Okay, let me get that set up. It's already there. So now, screen, Zoom. Okay, just will be a couple of seconds. And give me feedback once I have it up and rolling. Are you seeing the Instagram there, June?
Yes, we are. It's showing up beautifully.
Wonderful, wonderful. So this is Bill and I right here in the gym. This is a little bit of what we talked about as well, kind of week one. We wanted to illustrate it a little bit more. He does have 3-pound weights in his hands. So really what I'm really kind of illustrating here is kind of a throw, but I want the scapula to move. So there's a lot of scapular movement when the arm bone moves. I do remember the person asking me with a little bit of feedback in the sense if I have, my scaps fused. This one would not be a good one for you. We don't want to throw overhead. I'm not positive what the repercussion would be there. It would be, really definitely challenging some of those stabilizing muscles, I think, in an area where you wouldn't want to do. Some kind of a spider crawl up the wall, if you have the ability of doing that, maybe in a little slower kind of pace, is a little smarter and easier start for you. But I'm not sure exactly. I have not messed with, that idea of what it would be for feedback with the scapular fusion. So if we do not have that, this is a great start. Once again, Bill and I started with our hands kind of, clasped together, and I would give him the rise. He's now up to a pretty good control. This is a progression here a little bit from that golf swing that we used with the TRX last week. The assisted weight makes him have to hold it for longer. Obviously, I had this on repeat, so he wouldn't do this many reps. But we would go into like a next set where maybe he would have to go up and hold, or hold at a certain point, or I'd tell him to go to shoulder level and try to maintain it for a second or two and then release, or just control the drop down as well. Here's the next exercise here. I went to just a hip stabilizing exercise. This one is a little bit of a challenge because you have to go into a balance factor here. I do have, both of his knees onto a pad there, or the one knee, excuse me, and then both the hands are stable. A couch works pretty well here, with the knee onto the couch and then the hands on like the armrest, if that's a stable spot for you. This is a little bit of a progression to what I talked about beforehand. When we're pushing out with the knees like so, when someone is sitting, we're working relatively similar muscles in the hips there of making that outward force. Now he's having to lift his own resistance. This is not something that Bill and I would have been able to do right away. So this is definitely much more of a progression down the road. This is a pretty fun exercise here. Bill and I, we became really creative. The thing wrapped around his wrist is more so of an apparatus that is used on a cable machine that people will put around their ankles, or I guess possibly wrist. I have not seen that, but we used it with the wrist, and then I put a dowel piece around. So he has a little bit of that proprioception of feeling that upward rise and making an overhead press. This was huge. This was a humongous progression for us. I did start to then load his hand. This one was harder to load the hand just because of more of the angle and how the dowel piece would get in the way a little bit. But it was great feedback for Bill to be able to feel the scapula moving. He sometimes where I would go up and touch his chest, palpate the chest, so he knows that it's an overhead press. We are still working the chest muscle tissue. Yes, there's a lot of deltoid. There's a lot of action around the shoulder girdle that is working to assist this movement. But there is also a primary muscle in the chest that is firing. So we want him to feel that move. We're going to go into a flat position here. And really, it's just guidance. I tell him here to try to find a little bit more of a slower motion. The slower the motion is, the less he's actually relying on the dowel piece and the gravity just to hold it up. This, again, big chest muscle tissue movement. So I want him to think about that. It's not just his hand. He's not just sliding the hand up and down. We're getting feedback to some of the main muscles that help stabilize the body and move the body around. So also a great exercise and relatively simple. A broomstick would work, and then you could create some kind of almost just a hoop of a towel, a belt, and put your hand on the bottom and just slide. As long as it slides, you'll get the feedback of how it feels to make that action. This again is a little bit of a progression now to the very first week of the push and pull, where the hands are kind of clasped together and the other person is helping assist. He's doing this motion 100%. I'm not touching at all. So very cool. And the last one here, this is a little bit more intense. This is Bill. I just wanted to show some of his progressions here. It's the proprioception again for the body balance. He has to think about where he's at in space when he's stepping forward. I try to tell him a lot of driving into the ground, create force through the ground so we can move up through the body. And then we're using the chest again. This is the resistance. I actually have 20 pounds on each side. So, Bill has progressed a lot here. We did not start with this. We used even just more so of a lighter resistance band. You know, we can go into that another week there of some other exercises that filled in, but I wanted to tie that one in as well because it gives people a little bit of that concept of, you know, where we can go, what we can see here. Once again, though, this took Bill and I about 4.5 years. You know, we've made some big progressions a long time ago too, but then new things pop up. You know, we have to continue to challenge ourselves, and that's what keeps this exercise thing for the rest of our lives entertaining. Yeah,
Thank you, Mitch, for all the work that you've been willing to do with me.
I didn't know you were present. I'm glad to see you were watching this. This is a new video that I just posted today, so I didn't want to send it out too early. I wanted it to all be a beginning surprise. So I just posted this about 15 minutes prior to the start. And it looks really good, Bill. Really good. Bill, do you have any feedback on some of those exercises there as to, you know, maybe that one with the dowel piece in the slide as to how much progression and how much that kind of opened up some different ideas for us to do?
Well, I want to reiterate that this is very modular. I mean, initially there's a movement that I can't do, but then you would, let's say, you know, raising my arm or flexing at the elbow. You would move it passively, or I would use the brachioradialis instead of the biceps. And then you would palpate the biceps, and I would try to see, you know, visualize a connection. And then slowly with just range of motion and then increasing resistance, we would get the exercise.
Yeah,
where the movement is initially constrained and then is freer and freer.
Yeah, that's very neat. I was really excited to show a couple of these ones. These were some of our staples through our last probably 6 months to a year of some big progressions.
I was very pleased to be able to raise my arm overhead, and now not only can I do that movement, I don't need the guidance of the dowel, and I can do it with some resistance.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's great. How about some stability there, Bill? We can talk a little bit about, you know, with the balance factors. That's why I wanted to put this exercise out there for people to see, you know, of when we get a little bit more of that proprioception, even just from muscles contracting, you know, how does it make you feel afterwards of walking around, you know, when muscles become a little bit more active? Do you feel more confident doing things, whether it's bike riding, walking up the stairs like we've talked about a lot? What would the feedback you would give there?
Absolutely. It helps strengthening the core and improving my balance, keeps me from falling, but it allows me to be in the world without fearing falling as much.
Yeah, absolutely. Now with this exercise here, pushing out to the side and pushing into the diagonal form, you can see a little bit of all the above. You know, the out to the side and the diagonal are much harder. You know, the back side is a little bit more of that bigger glute muscle. The out to the sides are smaller muscles, and they're hard to work. And we tend to, our brains tend to forget how to use them sometimes, and a lot of times that can come from disuse. And that's a problem that, you know, I will come across with anybody and everybody, is really just as we tend to get older as well, disuse is also, you know, present within our lifestyles. So we just really have to have the small exercises. And I think I've mentioned this before, you know, a lot of my clientele, I hand out something called a WD-40. A WD-40 is just your exercises that, one, entertain you a bit. So you actually, you know, want to wake up and do it because you also know that makes you feel good. You know, and you do it each day, and the body becomes a little bit more versatile because it's gone through those repetitions, it's familiar with it, and it knows how to handle it when it's demanded on quickly. Absolutely.
I like how when I go to the gym, Mitch mixes it up so much that I'm doing things that are varied and interesting and fun, and we get to repeat things that I'm good at, and then things that I'm not good at, I'm initially frustrated, but I work through it because I trust the process now. That growth entails some degree of frustration.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that can be from, you know, all sorts of corners as well. You know, I mean, It's when we can't figure it out, sometimes it does. It becomes frustrating for the both of us. But that's the biggest part, is usually the communication between the two of us. You know we have a goal that we want to get to. Doing something too soon, too fast, doesn't necessarily get you there. You know, so have the patience, have the plans. You know, I was talking about that quite a bit with some family over the weekend, is even just having the plans out there to do the exercises. So like I said with the WD-40, my clients have the list. You know, does that mean they're going to do it? Not necessarily. So I need to almost set up a little bit of the idea of, hey, how about we, you know, let's do Tuesday and Thursday. Let's just start there. And then they usually end up doing more because their bodies feel good. You know, we feel the feedback, the positive feedback of what we get from doing the exercises usually makes us want to have more.
I admit to not always doing my exercises. In fact, that's
Not
often
always.
the case. That's often the case.
But how would you say we start our sessions often? Do I ask you?
You do ask me, and then I feel guilty. And then I
Yep.
end up incorporating some of the exercises into my daily routine, even subconsciously.
Absolutely. Exactly. Because you give me more feedback than you think, but it's also of my consistent, you know, just asking. And it's not like I'm telling you to, you know, this is not a drill sergeant here. You know, I mean, we have to have a good relationship, have a good rapport, but it's also being consistent. You know, our bodies feed off of consistency really well. So when we give it that consistent manner, you know, a lot of the times either the brain or, you know, the physical attributes also, you know, contribute, which is fantastic. So it's great stuff, Bill. Absolutely.
We have some live questions. There was a question about back pain and exercise. There's a question about how long the exercises should be done. And then people are asking me about my braces. So can you address the back pain issue and then how long exercises should be done, Mitch?
Yeah, you know, I mean, that is definitely a little bit of a wheelhouse spot for me with back pain. I have I've in the past, you know, had a lot of back pain. I did a couple of CrossFit things that really I ended up hurting my lower spine, and I kind of had to figure it out on my own a little bit. So my point of telling that is it really does depend a little bit. You know, is it shooting nerves? Are we having nerve issue? Can you bend over? Is it sciatica? Is it stiff and that's it? Is it stiff from sitting? So I would love to give a little bit more feedback there. I'm just going to go really basic on this answer then until I get some more feedback. Is activating the core, reteaching the muscles around the pelvis. A lot of times when that pelvis is off, that's what kind of pulls our spine, you know, maybe shortens or lengthens one of our legs. And that can really have an issue. That can come from all sorts of things, whether it is from a sitting slouching position and you shift to one hip. So one hip is higher for 12 hours out of the day. Or let's flip that around and say it's something that you do when you're sleeping. You hike one leg up onto the side, or you're laying belly down and the spine is here. So there's a lot of things that end up making it to the point where we have tension in that area. It can go as far as having neural tension. So meditation, yoga, stuff like that, where you are breathing from the diaphragm area to try to get things to work together as a team. So as I go back to how long, you know, it's more about the consistency is what I would lean towards on giving for advice right now. You know, look to move and try to learn from your own body on a consistent manner. I tell my clients more days out of the week than not. So that means 4. We want to sit down and talk to our body, listen to our body. What happens if you do this? What happens if you do that? What happens if someone gives you a feedback of here? Does it work better? Does it have a better response? If you do some toe touches, does it make it worse? Does it do this? Try to learn from it. And then that's when you can ask some kind of specific questions of like, you know, when I do this, do you have any suggestions there? Or, you know, the internet obviously is fantastic too. There's so much information out there, but you kind of got to dig a little bit deeper into your own, you know, body and response of what's happening when you're doing it. You know, like I said, do you think it came from sitting? You know, someone just approached Bill and I on Facebook about being a drummer. Could that have something to do with shoulder and neck tension? You know, there's a lot of things that can play a part to a back pain and how we, you need to loosen that up and make that be present. Sorry, my battery is running low and I think I just lost you guys for a second. I think I'm back. So go into an easier and simpler answer again is to activate the core and stretch out or activate the muscles around the hips and pelvis that'll help stabilize that midsection a little better.
Mitch, how would you guide someone in terms of how long one should do the exercise? How often?
Yeah, I mean, and so is that more based on to the exercises that we were talking about, you know, and showing earlier? You know, the body is trying to adapt. The body is trying to learn. You know, I don't want you to do so much that you end up getting sore, stiff in a joint, and it gives you negative feedback. So I would start light. You know, so let's go to the point. Let's say we're talking about some overhead, you know, kind of throws of the arms, overhead raises, or if you're doing the press or the pull or whatever I was kind of teaching in the last couple of weeks, why don't you push it to about a maybe 12 to 15 rep count and then adjust from there. I wouldn't necessarily go a whole bunch more, maybe do it more throughout the day, approach back to it. And I would really just do a set, maybe two. Let your body adapt and then feel the feedback. If it's good, if you felt awesome and you felt like you moved better throughout the day too, because maybe things are active, well, that's good feedback. That's when you'd want to add more volume. You know, everybody is a specific person and going to have specific, you know, feedback to an individual, you know, exercise, or maybe something that someone did have and someone didn't. That's just, you know, kind of the way it works. We have to listen to what it is. This is not a, you know, a one program meets to everybody. Everybody is individual, and that really is what helps like kind of separate my sessions too. You know, I do a lot of one-on-one training because, like I just said, some things that work for some don't work for the next.
Mitch, I want to address the question somebody asked about the braces. I'm going to just pivot a little bit and show the brace. These
great.
are not available yet for sale, but I want to make them available to everyone who would like to look at them. So I don't know if you can see my brace in the video. The reason I like these braces, and I designed them, is that they can fit inside my shoes. They have a hinge mechanism. They give me stability laterally, and they pull my foot up in a passive way. I'd be happy to talk more at length about making a custom built brace for whoever wants it, but they're expensive for me to manufacture because I go to a 3D printing service, and I would just be passing on those costs. I would like to be able to do it more at scale, and I have a program that can take some custom measurements, but I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. So if anyone wants to reach me afterwards to talk more at length, I am making a custom pair of braces for someone in the Seattle area, and hopefully I can disseminate this information or figure out somebody who's more interested in the manufacturing process to do it.
Yeah. Bill, why don't you mention a little bit about that video, or at least your experience and feedback for yourself when you did the treadmill and you did it kind of with and without. You know, we do quite a bit of exercise, and most of the exercise with the legs that we're doing at the gym, we include the braces, you know, with you know, include you're wearing them. How does it feel when you're walking with and without?
Well, I feel more confident when I'm walking with the braces. It allows me to accommodate for some irregular surfaces, and there's less up and down movement when I'm walking, and I think that's more obvious. And I also have to raise the leg less to keep it from catching, you know, stubbing my toe, and that's another advantage of using the brace. But it's not, the brace alone hasn't helped my walking. I think working on balance, working on strength, and also working on reducing the tone. I had a lot of inversion, plantar, am I using the right term? Inversion rather than eversion was stronger. And so my foot wouldn't necessarily land on the ground without promoting my turning the ankle. So the braces alone would not be enough for that. I had to work with Mitch on relaxing some muscles as well as strengthening
Yep.
others.
And that is a big key that, you know, I like to use as well. Is, you know, we have a lot of different systems working between our limbs and our core, and you know, that is the party, is that we want to have a party of all the muscles. Is, you know, every movement wants to be including as many muscles as we can, and that's the efficiency of it, as well as we can last for longer. Our bodies don't get, you know, that wear and tear quicker or really fatigued as fast, you know. And that's the part of resistance training too. I've had a really good time with Bill of showing him a little bit of, you know, what weight feels like, and then doing it again. And when he has weight in his hand and he's doing the same exercise that we used to do, you know, a little while ago without the weight, and he's going, wow, that's really heavy, then we'll repeat afterwards. And it's really the whole point. He's going, well, this is way easier again, because of the difference without carrying X amount of weight, or having trying to squat or curl or overhead press or any kind of a movement pattern with weight resistance. It's much harder.
Going back to the back pain question, Mitch, one of the questioners had low back issues and was curious, watching some of the effort Bill was putting into doing the exercise, would that effort risk low back pain? I can speak anecdotally for myself that I have not suffered low back pain from doing these efforts. And if anything, strengthening my core musculature and doing more walking on the treadmill has relieved some of the, you know, the occasional back pain I would experience.
Yes, agreed. So, I mean, I'm going to have a real quick answer on this one, and it's going to be in the sense of, what are we trying to work when we're doing that exercise? So my thought of what your question is pertaining to is probably when he's kneeling down and doing the leg swings. So if I'm looking at it from a little bit more of a peripheral vision, and I'm saying I see more of a spine rotation rather than a hip lift, then yes, you know, you're going to be you need to be aware of how to start with that. So let's say you really didn't feel very confident going with that. Where I would probably put Bill, and where I put Bill to begin with, was hands onto a wall and just do a leg swing. And when the leg is swinging, you get that proprioception up to the brain and the neuromuscular connection of, oh, my leg is swinging, I feel some hip muscles. And then when we go against gravity, now you have to use those hip muscles to lift it up. And then we make those connections. We correlate all the above and put it together and become stronger and stronger with that connection. And then the muscles become stronger and stronger, and then we start moving better. You know, so if we move well and move often, we'll feel pretty good. But the beginning part is moving well. You know, so we have to know what the hip swing is for. We're trying to get the glute to fire, the hip muscles to fire. But if we rotate to lift up that hip, then yeah, it looks like you're trying to actually get a little bit more of maybe our low back involved, and that low spine is moving in an area where we don't want it to be, then yes. So I know that's a vague question and probably hard to answer yours specific, but we would have, you know, you need to either video camera it, watch it, know what it's looking for. With Bill, watch his low back. It's staying relatively stable. I don't need him to be frozen, but I need him to be able to keep that stable. The spine stays neutral while his hip moves out. If his spine is moving as much as his hip is, both of those muscles are going to get fatigued, and that the low spine muscles are not meant to do that as much.
Mitch, there's a couple more questions I want to address. One of the attendees asks, do you have any safety features or suggestions for the treadmill? My wife fears I'll fall backwards and off and have a bad outcome. I think that if you start with a slow setting and keep a nice grip, that would help reduce risk, and also have an auto shut off attached to yourself so that if you fall, it doesn't keep on spinning. Yep. Another question I want to
Bill, I want to address that I want to address that back question real fast. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
You know, safety is huge. Safety is really, really big. Half of what Bill and I are doing is trying to prevent from falling. So yes, I think that is a fine, you know, answer there. You know, assess on your own. Where Bill and I started was not the treadmill, though. I will say that right away. So we did something we called it the robot walk, because I wanted him to be very exaggerant, but we walked a straight line at the gym, and I wanted him to touch his elbows to his knees. So it made the walking a lot harder, but it made it to the point where he became much more confident he went down and backwards and on this straight line. And eventually, a couple months into it, it became our warm-up. Our workout was our warm-up. So, start simple. I'm going to go very, very simple. Start in a box, lift your knees, then stand up, lift your knees. If you want to get away from the counter, walk down down and back. So something really simple there too. And then if you feel confident, we do not want to, we need to prevent all falls. Yes, challenges are fantastic. Getting into uncomfortable zones is where we a lot of times create some wonderful growth, but we have to be smart. Doing something too soon is not something that we want to, deal with the repercussions from.
Mitch, one questioner asked, if I feel pain when I do any exercise, should I stop?
For the most part, I would say yes.
I would agree.
We need to know the difference of fatigue, muscular fatigue, or if it's a pain. Can you adjust something? Can you change? If you're sitting like this and doing an overhead raise, can you lower your shoulders and try there? Does it change? If it doesn't change, or if it's just super painful, yes, you do not want to continue. You're either probably doing something too soon, too intense. But like we've said a couple of times, I know everyone's at like different areas too. So I want to try to get the information to a lot of different, kind of focuses in different groups. So yes, we have to make the regressions. There's regressions and progressions to just about everything. You just got to be creative.
Mitch, one person has asked, do you feel your muscles have grown stronger, or are you using muscles you aren't used to using? Doctors have always told me with FSH that we can't build our muscles stronger. I would have agreed with you that we can't build the dystrophic muscles stronger, but my experience has shown that not only am I strengthening the muscles that I have gotten weaker because of disuse, I have gotten dystrophic muscles to get stronger. So when I'm bending my elbow, I was able to bend my elbow initially with brachioradialis and not any biceps, but now I have biceps strength as well, and I can palpate the biceps contracting, and I was not able to do so earlier. Ditto with the triceps. I was not able to use my triceps. Now I can palpate it, and I can feel it moving against resistance. So it's not just muscles that have been not used.
Yeah.
So there's another. Second that. Yeah, that's what I think is remarkable about this. There's another question from Karen, who's asked, this is for both of you. I have winging of the scapula with pigeon chests, and my arms are slowly losing muscle and strength. And with that, I feel the neck tension too. Can you help me with all the exercises that can help? I'm not sure if I can do the first exercise Mitch showed.
Yes, probably not. That was definitely a large progression there. Once again, Bill, what would you say? Because scapular winging was a very big thing. Then when Bill first walked into me as well, of a little bit having that collapsed chest, it's short muscles up in front. So there's a couple of things that I would go with right away is even just doing some type of stretches for the chest, whether it's door frame stretches. Those are pretty common with physical therapy, and doctors will give you those type of feedback there. Laying just on like a bench, laying on the ground would work great. Just opening up the chest muscle tissue and breathing through that area. Our chest muscle tissue is attached to our scapula. So when it gets short, it's going to pull the scapula into areas where it gets short too, which a lot of times is up, over, and out, which makes a little bit of that scapular winging idea. And then going back to that, I think it was week 2, with a lot of the talk about the serratus anterior. The serratus anterior is going to keep that scapula a little more suction cupped to our rib cage and create that smooth glide around that we're looking for when we make our reaches and we make our pulls. So, something that all depends on where your level is. A simple one that I do with all clientele, especially if we can lift up to this point, is even just something called a shoulder fan. It's just opening up, okay? When we do that, anywhere our arm bone goes, our scapula follows. So as it goes from the forward point and it's reaching forward, and I go here, it makes it to the point where it moves. And then we can kind of think about the smooth glide. I don't want you thinking about activating the serratus anterior. Some people might know what that is. Many people do not. So it's simple cues. Think about a smooth glide, and a lot of times it works. Every time? No, not necessarily. And that's where Bill and I have had a lot of, kind of that feedback of touching individual muscles, trying to get that to work. Does every exercise work for every person? No, it does not. But there are a lot of exercises out there that me and Bill have kind of filtered through, had fun for him, but is it going to pertain to everybody else? No, it will not. So, do some research out there. Think about shoulder stabilization or scapular winging. What muscles are weak? What muscles do I need to attack? We can absolutely do a whole video on purely just scapular winging, but right now we've got about 5 sessions kind of in the bank where we know we're going to do. So I want to try to get you guys different information all over the place. If it gets to the point where the demand is there, we can create some different approaches of individual spots.
Mitch, thank you. There's another question. Any evidence of exercises that involve eccentric contractions being more detrimental than beneficial for FSHD people? Can you first explain what an eccentric contraction is and then address the question?
Yes. The easiest way to probably explain, and I'll do this with a lot of clients because a lot of us are aware of what our biceps and where our biceps are. So when we do a concentric contraction, it's concentric and eccentric. Concentric is when we make our curl, and so it gets short. Now, when I go from up here and I was to lengthen it out, I'm still using it. It's still contracted, but it's getting longer. Okay, so as it gets longer, that's our eccentric contraction. Have Bill and I had negative feedback on that? I would not say no. Do we do it all the time? I wouldn't say that's our biggest feedback there either. I do a lot of different type tempos that makes Bill have to adjust to it. Has it been an eccentric focus? Not necessarily. Have we done it? Yes. And have we had negative feedback? No.
I'm going to answer that from my own experience, which agrees with Mitch's. I was not aware that was a potential problem, and it has not been a problem for me, the eccentric contraction exercises.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, you guys. We've taken up a lot of your time again today, but as you can see, the questions keep coming. So
questions are there. It's good.
Yeah. And I'm sure there'll be more next week. So thank you so much.
Was my email just given to Karen? I know she was asking for it, so I wanted to make sure.
She was. I checked with Bill to make sure it was okay to give it out first. So.
Oh, sorry. I'm standing a little further back, so I don't see all the questions. So.
Also, everybody should know that your email and your Instagram accounts links are on our Sequester Camp website, so people can always find it there as well.
Wonderful. Excellent.
Well, thank you so much. I think we'll wrap for today, and we'll see
we had fun.
you next week.
Thank you, Mitch.
See you all next week.
It's all working out. Okay.
Yeah, you guys are the best. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.